Hello, my name is Jeanette Rice Lightfoot. I was born in Alexandria Hospital right there on Duke Street. My parents moved here, I think, sometime in the early 30s. I was born in 49, one of 8 children. We all attended the local schools here, and I'm told by everyone who knew them that my siblings were among the smartest in each class at Parker Gray or Charles Houston, where they went to school. And I'm doing this today because my sister Barbara and I are the last two members of our family that survived. And I wanted to make sure there was some memory of the Rice family left in the city of Alexandria. Okay, my brothers were James, Willie, Charles, and George. My sisters Margaret, Kathleen, who everybody called Kat, Mary Frances, and Barbara. Barbara is still with us, but she lives in Lansing, Michigan now. My earliest memory of growing up was when I was about 3 years old, and my father took me on a walk, and we walked to Orinoco and stopped either at Washington Street or St. Asaph Street, and he pointed down and showed me this development that was going to be the Berg. And he said, "That's where we're moving to." I don't know why, but that stuck out in my memory. It could be because my father was not that communicative, and that's the one thing I remember about him and I doing together. Um, so when I was like 3 years old, we moved to the Berg on 420 Orinoco Street, and we stayed there until I was 10. And then we moved to Duke Street, 822 Duke Street, stayed there for a couple years. And then finally, my parents were able to purchase a house on 428 North Fayette Street. Remember the schools? I think I went to every school that was for black kids at the time. I went started Charles Houston, and before they built the new Loud's Crouch, Charles Houston got overcrowded, and for 1 year, they took a couple classes of us kids who lived in the Berg and sent us to school at Parker Madden, which was actually the administration building for the Berg projects. So we went there for a year, then back to Charles Houston, and in fifth grade, they transferred us all to Loud Crouch, which was a much longer walk, but it was a new school, so we didn't complain too much. Plus, there were a lot of corner stores. We could stop by penny candy before and after school. Um, when I got to eighth grade, we were still on Duke Street, but by the end of that year, we had moved to North Fayette, so that cut the walk more than a half to go to Parker Gray. And I attended Parker Gray from eighth grade through 10th grade. And in 11th grade, we had to move to GW, George Washington High School, when Alexandria decided to finally integrate its school systems. So I graduated from George Washington High School. Um, my family grew up as members of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, so I have a lot of fond memories of Ebenezer and the time spent there in the junior choir and Sunshine Band and going on the annual outings they took to the beach, which is our only time going to the beach, that one bus trip every year. What else do I remember? Mostly I remember just the neighborhoods and having lived all over the city, and actually wherever you move, you still went to school with the same kids because the schools were segregated. So but it was a great way to make friends and to foster lifetime friendships, which we still have going with us this day. I was the youngest. I should have said that. No, they were older. My sister Barbara is 4 years older than me, and then my sister Mary was like 3 years older than her, and my sister Margaret like a couple years older. Actually, George was in between. George and Margaret were like just a year or so apart, and then the other brothers were again like 3 or 4 years apart of an age. So to me, except for Barbara and Mary Frances, they were all adults when I was born, as far as I knew. So I see them coming and going, but not much interaction with them and as a young child. My father worked for the railroad system. He was a porter at the Union Station in Alexandria. And my mother was basically a housewife. She did do some days work, a couple days a week, or half a day, whatever, a week at someone's house. That's what she always said. If I put on the school paper, what's your mother's occupation? And I'd say housekeeper or something. She'd say, no, I'm a housewife. So that's what she was as far as she was concerned. She was just a stay-at-home mother. And she was an excellent cook. And whenever we had a bake sale or something at school, they always requested that my mother make brownies. And for the church, when they were raising money, she had to make the potato salad. And our house was like the spot. So all my brothers and sisters, their friends were always at our house. So, like, Alexandria was a community where everybody thought they were your parents. So you couldn't do anything wrong or whatever you did, it was reported immediately. But my sisters and brothers had their friends in the house all day. And being adults, basically, they were in at all hours of the day and night. So that was also a good uh, learning experience for me because they were there. And, you knew they had eyes on you and they were going to look out for you. Fortunately, I was not one of those kids who needed to be disciplined. I was mostly into reading books and didn't social. Well, we socialized. They used to have dances at the rec center on Friday nights. I don't know if it was every Friday or once a month or something at the Pendleton Street Recreation Center, and we were allowed to go to those. And I was surprised. Much later, I talk about it, that a lot of my friends who became permanent life friends didn't attend those, and a lot of them said they couldn't even go to the night basketball or football games. Their parents were so strict with them, and it's one thing. I was in the band, so that was the group of people I was with. So I never noticed other people were missing at those events. But life in Alexandria was good. you know, we were segregated, we were poor, we didn't know that. We were just living our lives. And it wasn't until, I don't know, I guess, first daily encounters with white people was when the schools integrated. And I felt, okay, so some of the stuff you see on television is real. Some of them really live like that. Um, but I had enjoyed my time at GW too. I ended up as the vice president of the senior class. And as we look back on that, we think it was rigged because they wanted to make sure, that because I'd been in 11th grade, and then by 12th grade, I'm voted in as vice president. So we know it was rigged. And found out much later, after going to a high school reunion, that as class officers, we both basically had one meeting the entire year, and that was in the fall of the year. And they wanted me to be in charge of, I guess, like the Halloween or whatever celebration. And it turns out they were afraid that the black students were going to come dressed inappropriately, which shows that they didn't know us at all because, for the most part, we didn't do costumes. If you went trick or treating, you put some smut on your face and a hat on your head and called yourself a hobo. Wasn't in these elaborate costumes. And it turned out there was one person who was not a black person who was actually sent home from school that day because her costume was very inappropriately scanty. Um, and we found out there were no more meetings of the senior class that year. The senior class officers, the administration did whatever they wanted to do with us. And nobody noticed it. I didn't notice it at the time, but like 20-year reunion, we talked about it. Oh yeah, we never did meet, did we? But it was a good experience. No, there were some students that had gone there a couple years beforehand. I think I went there in the 11th grade. My cousin, Nolan Dawkins, went there, I think, when he was in the 10th grade, and he graduated a year ahead of me. So he may have been one of the first, I'm not sure, but maybe a couple years before. But the year I went, it was mandatory. So there was not going to be another graduating class from Parker Gray. So you had to move either to GW or to Hammond on the West End. I played the clarinet. Yeah, I started playing the clarinet in elementary school at Louse Crouch, and I played through high school, through my years of Parker Gray. I did not join the band at GW. And that's the marching band was one of the real good highlights of the school because for high school we did intricate patterns on the field like you would see the college students doing, like different formations and learning the music, topical music. We had like songs of the day. Like I remember one thing we did for homecoming. We played "Save the Last Dance for Me," and we did a routine to that on the field. The Robinson Library. I went to the Robinson Library. That was part of the school routine. They would take us. I don't know if it was once a week or probably once every 2 weeks. We would go from Charles Houston. We would go over to the library and get a book. But mostly I read at home since I have a lot of older brothers and sisters. I read their books. Like I can remember when I was in, we were still in the Bergs. I was somewhere in elementary school, and my sister Mary was in high school, and I used to read her books. I used to read her Shakespeare plays. I loved to read Shakespeare. I obviously didn't know what was going on with but the stories and the words were kind of fascinating, but I didn't know the meaning of them. But I read her books. And like most black families, we had a set of encyclopedias. So I used to read the World Book Encyclopedia. At that time, like I said, I read part of the encyclopedias to see what was going on. And I think I read mostly fiction. So it was whatever was in her books or my sister Barbara's books, the stories and plays that were there. I don't think they ever had any novels that I can remember reading, but just their school books and literature books and history books. After high school, I went to college. I went to Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. When I first went there, it was Western Reserve University, and it was they had a women's college, Floristone Mather, and a men's college and a night college that were all combined into the university. By the time I graduated, it had merged with Case Institute of Technology to become Case Western Reserve University. So everybody still calls it Case instead of the full name to this day. That was another wonderful experience. It was also difficult for me, like having been at the top of among the top in the class at GW and to go to university and be thrown in with all these other students, most of whom came from New York or Philadelphia or New Jersey, where the education system was much more rigorous. It was kind of a shock because I almost never had to study during high school, but going there, it's like, oh, what is this? You have to spend hours and hours on this stuff. So it was a struggle at first, but I got through it. I slipped up the first year. I didn't do well, and after a year and a half, I left because of bad grades. Stayed home for a year. I worked in the government that year, and then I went back to school the following year and finished up there. A year behind my original class, but I finished, and I finished with a decent average. Not enough to get any awards, but it was close. So I got figured out how the game was played, and was able to get through those classes a lot easier after I returned. Um, my major was urban and environmental studies, and I should have stayed with it. I wish I had, but I didn't. I got a master's degree in student personnel administration in higher education, and also from Case Western Reserve. It was the first year they started that graduate program, and I wish I had done something different. My undergraduate advisor wanted me to go to Syracuse and get a degree in public administration, which would have been a much better plan. But at that age, I thought I knew what I wanted to do. And by the time I finished that 2 year master's degree, I realized I really did not want to work with college students. It was the turning point. Like we were the generation that was into the Vietnam War and starting of the environmental movement and all kind of social movements. And there was major shift. Like when after I graduated in '71, the students who came in below were more beginning like self-centered, and what can I do to gain myself, and didn't really seem to be that involved in what was going on. But I did try. When I left Cleveland, I moved to Massachusetts, where my husband was now. We were had gone together at sweethearts in high school, and he was in the Air Force for 4 years, stationed in California. And after he got out, stayed back in Alexandria for a year, and then he went to Boston to go to college. So when I graduated from my master's program, I moved to Boston, and we got married like a month later. Um, and looking around, like with all the colleges in Boston, I said, okay, we'll see what this degree could do, and found out not much because they were looking for PhDs in Boston, not masters. So if I wanted to actually use my master's in student personnel, I would have had to move to a much smaller community somewhere probably in the Midwest or South to get started. So I switched and I had a journeyman career. I did personnel work for the Massachusetts Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Education. Um, I did like orientation for new employees, and which was great because it was at a time when they were transforming from having the students who had developmental issues or mental issues who were housed in like institutions. They had to come under the purview of the Department of Education. So all those employees had to be reoriented. So I got to travel the whole state of Massachusetts, like from Williamsburg or Williamstown in the very far west down to Cape Cod. Um, I did that for a couple years, two or three, I don't know. And then I saw an ad that the Commonwealth Division of Banking was looking to hire and train bank examiners. So I did that. And I became a principal bank examiner, working mostly with the state-controlled banks, doing safety and wellness checks on the banks. And then the banking department had openings in their computer division, so I took class in computer programming and became a computer programmer. And from that, I stayed with them a couple years, two or three, and then I went to work for Digital Equipment Corporation. And the rest of it, I stayed with them until we left Massachusetts and came back here and got a job in corporate America with one of the Beltway Bandits. And I stayed there for 27 years doing programming, project management, training, testing, whatever in the realm of IT. We stayed with my mother-in-law for about 6 months until we found a house. And actually, we're in Fairfax County, the Alexandria mailing address, but Fairfax County, because at that time we looked for a house in Alexandria and we found the same house. Floor plan in Alexandria was about $100,000 more than it was in Fairfax County. So we chose Fairfax County. And still live there to this day in the same house. We have two kids, adults now. Jennifer and Matthew. Jennifer and her husband live in Glen Burnie, Maryland, with my one grandchild, May. And my son Matthew and his girlfriend live in Henrico County, down outside Richmond. Not married yet, no kids, don't plan on having kids. I guess my one granddaughter is it. And my life in Alexandria, one of my mother-in-law's friends got me involved with the Alexandria NAACP back in the early 90s. And I stuck with them and I'm still a member with them today. I'm the secretary of the branch. But for many years, I worked with the Youth Council. We had a very active Youth Council in the early days, in the 90s and I guess going to the 2000s, and also with the ACTSO program, which was the Afro-Academic Cultural Technological Scientific Olympics. So I enjoy working with high school students to have them go compete in whatever, like the academic subjects, humanities, dancing, they added culinary. There was like 30 different categories they could compete in. So we did manage to get two students to win medals. One, I think, was a gold medal in vocal, contemporary vocal, and the other was a silver medal in poetry. So that was really one of the highlights of my, like, when my kids were growing up, they just wanted to do sports. They were in the youth council, but they did not participate in that. So, oh yes, we lived through all the changes. Like when they first knocked down all the houses to put in Route One, you know, a lot of friends were displaced. A few of them had families actually moved out of the city and moved into Washington at that time. Some of them continued to come to Alexandria to graduate high school if they were in high school already. Others just moved away and kind of lost touch with them. And just the neighborhoods are gone. All the old black neighborhoods are just gone. Like on my block, the 400 block of North Fayette Street, we lived across the street from like the Cahos and oh my God, why can't I think of his name? The Days, who were very prominent members of Alexandria society. Some of the I guess like you can almost call them founding fathers of the community in that day. And it was the black people, the block people used to call it the block with the trees. Because on the north side, maybe on the south side too, it was one block where there were a lot of trees on the block. And that's, I think we were not the last, but we were among the last people to sell the house. We sold our house in the mid 2000s, mid 2000s. I don't know, maybe I can't even remember now. Maybe 10 years ago. And my neighbors next door sold theirs about the same time. And I don't know that there are any black families left on that block now. But my cousin used to always walk through and tell us, "You should stay in this house. Don't move. Give up your house to Fairfax. Come back to the city." But we said we needed more space. It just wasn't practical. But in hindsight, maybe we should have done that. But we enjoy where we are. Definitely. I mean, it lost the majority of its black population, especially I guess those who had a bigger sense of community and attachment to each other. Because even if you get some of the churches now, a lot of the members are people who come from Maryland to go to the churches in Alexandria. And like I say, I'm in Fairfax County. I have friends who commute from Prince William County to come back up to the church, on Sundays. They don't give up the church, but the neighborhoods are gone. And it's still a feeling of ownership, of kinships. Like we keep in touch and we try to monitor, what's going on in the city that affects the black community that's left in the city, and also to work within the larger society, so that we're all kind of working together to help the city move along and help it stay a decent place for everyone to live in. I mean, I can remember I attended the meetings when they were doing the Braddock Road Small Area Plan, and it just galls me that we were talking about building parks. And this one woman said, "Well, why don't we just do a dog park? We don't really need anything for the kids." And it's like, okay, that's it. Who are these people? Who are these people? And you see today, a lot of people walking around Alexandria with their dogs and they don't have kids. So it's like a dog city, okay? But it's still like, as you're living here, working here. It's a thriving place and it's growing their reputation. Like the Old Town, it's like as big as Georgetown as far as people go, looking for venues to come eat. I have friends who live like in Baltimore, or a cousin now who lives up in Maryland. I can't near the Delaware border, and she still works in Crystal City, and she comes to Alexandria to eat. And people will tell me, like, I have friends in New York who watch the Sunday services of Alfred Street Baptist Church on the internet. So Alexandria's got a good reputation. Um, my biggest influences were my two teachers, Miss Hunter, Ardelia Hunter, who taught me in third and fourth grade, and Mr. Carter, Alfred Carter, who was the biology teacher at Parker Gray. And they were the two who probably encouraged me the most and kept telling me, you know, you're smart, you can do anything, you know, just keep going forward. Other than that, it's my family, you know, that kind of encouraged me, especially my mother. She was the strongest one, um, the one who's most involved in my life anyway. My father, like I said, he worked, you know, and we talked, you know, from time to time, but that first encounter I told you about, I don't think we ever had an intimate moment like that again. But we did talk, and I watched sports with him. Like he loved baseball, so we used to watch baseball with him. But my mother's the one who sit in the kitchen and watch her. Like since we had such a large family and so many friends stopping over, she was always cooking. So that's why I sit and watch and learn how to cook, watching her cook. And she was an inspiration for a cookbook. I don't know if you've heard of it, The Good Heart and a Light Hand. It's a cookbook that Ruth Gaskins did. She was a family friend of my sisters, Mary and Kat. And she did a cookbook on Alexandria, and she did the front cover features her mother and my mother. And it's got a good heart and a light hand. Because my mother, she asked my mother, what do you need to cook so well? And that's what he told her, you need a good heart and a light hand. And it was published, um, and she went like to all the like elders in the city and got their recipes. And they actually, well, they didn't have recipes, but she had a test kitchen, you know, and they would like slowly, you know, like, take a handful of stuff, they take it and they measure it so they could write down the ingredients and compile this cookbook. One of my classmates from GW, who was at the 20th or 25th high school reunion, told me she has that book. She said, I really rely on that cookbook. And we looked it up. I was telling a friend about it recently. They'd never heard of it and looked it up. And we have like a spiral bound copy, and there was a hardbound copy that was on sale on the internet for like $1,000. Yeah, so the hard copy is only like I mean, the spiral bound, you can still get it from somewhere for like $30 or $40, I think. Well, it was good. I know what she did. I can make duplicate her potato salad. I can do other foods that she did. What we never got was her rolls or cakes. I never got a recipe. And the recipe that Ruthie ended up putting in the cookbook, I said, it's not really my mother's cake. It was, they tried to approximate what she was doing, but they didn't quite get it right. But yeah, I did learn cooking skills from her. Yeah, very much so. Just remember walking, the city, how walkable it was, and riding bikes as a kid. I have a girlfriend that we lived on Duke Street together, and we used to ride our bikes down Union Street because it was quiet and there wasn't much traffic. We ride from Duke Street all the way up to the north side to the end of town and back and around, and play. I remember the pool, and regret that we were not of the families that spend all summer at the pool. I think living in the Berg, I think when the playground down there had field trips to the pool, we would go so like 2 or 3 times a summer maybe. Um, and that's the one thing I wish I had done more of, because to this day I can keep myself alive in the water, but I'm not a good swimmer. Um, but just the people, what I cherish most. I miss some of the old neighborhoods, but mostly just the people. And we found a way, thanks to Lucky and Brenda, to bring us back together on a regular basis. But without them, I don't know that we it would even have this connection where we're coming back together like this. And of course, Shar Bar and her projects have helped also, to kind of reignite those old feelings and keep people going. And this library project is great. I mean, to gather the history and the family reunion, the fall. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. I don't think so. Just thank you for the opportunity. I really Like for the Rice family to be remembered in someone's history, we do. My brother James did have kids. He has 5 kids, and they have children, but none of them live in the city. There's one who's still in like the Fredericksburg area, and the others are scattered back in North Carolina, where he ended up as an adult. He moved back there. That's where he grew his family. So they're in here and they're in North Carolina. I have one nephew who's in Arizona. And my sister Barbara had 2 daughters who are now deceased, but she has 3 grandchildren. 2 of them live in the city, and one is in Washington. But the Rice family name would just be my brother James's kids, and they're the ones who are in Carolina, basically. Well, I can't think of anything profound. I just say, like, believe in yourself, keep family close, keep invested in your church, keep God in your life. And remember, that with family and with God and with good friends, you can make the best of it. Do what you can to live to the best of your ability. God's given you talents, and you need to make sure you use them in the right direction.